Welcome to Motherhood. I'm Dr. Christina Hibbert, and I'm here to help you overcome, to become, and to flourish in this fascinating experience we call motherhood. And today we're going to be talking about some of those times when we're given a little too much maybe in life, or we're given a new challenge or a change, and we have to do what we talk about here each week on the show, and that is choose to grow through it instead of just going through it. And I want you to think about a time in your life when you have been faced with something difficult. Maybe it was a decision you had to make. Maybe it was, being in school. Maybe you're still in school. Maybe it was having your first or second child. Maybe it was the fact that you couldn't have children. Maybe it was a loss, a painful breakup, or any other kind of change in your life. And think about that for a minute and think about, how did you get through it? What helped you through those difficult times in your life? And I would guess, even though I can't tell what everybody out there is thinking, I would just venture a guess to say that in some way or another, it had to do with some relationships. Somebody in your life that helped you through, somebody who cared for you, somebody who loved you, somebody who helped you. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Today we're going to be talking about growing through motherhood and personal growth in motherhood through our relationships. Because really, that's where we get the best experience of growth. I always say that as mothers, we are planted in the most fertile soil for personal growth because we are forced to have these relationships with our children, with our spouse or partner, with our families, with the world, in a new way when you're a mom. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So stick around because it's going to be a great show today. And I'll be introducing our guest in just a minute. But first, I want to thank you for joining us each week here on Motherhood. It is such a pleasure to get to grow with you here each week. And I hope you've joined us online at drchristinahibbert.com and on our social media sites. And I also hope, in case you missed last week's episode on essential oils, I just want to take a minute to share how much I love essential oils, again, first of all, but also that we are doing this fabulous giveaway. So if you're listening to this before April 1st, 2016, go to my website, look for my post on Essential Oils 101, and you can enter to win a fabulous prize of a family physician kit, which is over 10 oils and valued at over $160. So I don't want you to miss out on that. So go to drchristinahibbert.com, enter to win today. And speaking of giveaways, I want you to stick around for my Dr. Christie's Simple Solutions segment, which we'll be doing later on in the show. And I'll be sharing one of my new favorite apps and a program that can help you to teach your kids some amazing things and have fun while doing it. So it's definitely a way to improve your relationships. And we have an incredible giveaway from the founder of the company as well. So make sure you stick around for that. Now, I also want to thank you for joining us on our Facebook group. And for those who haven't yet, go to Facebook, look up Growing Through Motherhood, and ask to be added to the group. And we would love to have you join us there. It's really getting to be a great place to hang out as moms together. Now, again, here we're talking about all of the difficult experiences in our life. And I was thinking today about, many of you know that I've been through many of my own difficult experiences as a mother, including postpartum depression many times, including going to graduate school when I had 2 little kids, and last year of graduate school I was pregnant with my third, including, of course, losing my sister and her husband and inheriting children and becoming a mom of 6. Many difficult times, but I was thinking back to before I became a mom. And when I was 18 years old, well, actually, let me back up. When I was 16 years old, my youngest sister, McLean, she got cancer. And she had cancer of the kidneys, and it was stage 4 by the time they found it. So she went through surgeries and chemotherapy and all kinds of treatment for a year and a half. And when I was 18 years old, it was actually the very first week of school. I think it was the second or third day of school in college, my sophomore year. My parents called me that night and told me that Mickey was really, really sick and that she was going to die. And she did. She died that night before I could get home, which was really sad for me. But my sister Shannon and I. Shannon's the one who died just a few years back, but at that time we were together, and she was only a year younger than I was, and we were really close. So we flew home together and went to that funeral and went through that whole experience, which of course is really challenging for young people, for parents of course too. And it hit my parents really hard. So my dad pretty much kind of disappeared into work and other things, and my mom had always struggled with depression. She'd been through her own breast cancer already when I was 15. And here she was just devastated and really was depressed. And so I felt like for many, many years, like my parents just weren't available. And then fast forward to when, I suddenly had my sister die and her husband die, and we had inherited these kids and had a baby, and suddenly I had 6 kids. That was the one thing that drove me through that challenge, to choose to grow through that challenge. It was the one thing that I kept thinking of, was just how hard it was for me and for my younger siblings. I'm the oldest of 6, and so my youngest sister had died, Mickey McLean, and then we had 4 other kids that were young. I was 18, they were all younger than I was, and I had to help them out a lot, help raise them a lot when I was around, because my parents weren't able to do that. They were doing the best they could, I realize now, but I did feel like I wish they would have been there more for us. So to me, I always think of that when I start to wonder as a mom, why do we have to try to grow through these challenges instead of just going through them? Why can't we just get through it and get on with our lives? And the price is too high when you're a mom, isn't it true? We just can't afford to sit by and just go through it. We need to help ourselves and our families grow through whatever goes on in our lives. And we're all going to have our hard times. So without anything more to say, let me go ahead and introduce our fabulous guest for today. And I'm so grateful she's here to talk about this important topic that I know is dear to both of our hearts. Michelle Duncan Wilson, welcome so much to the show.
Thank you. So honored to be here.
It's such a pleasure to have you. And I love this. Listeners out there, you guys can understand this. Every once in a while, a friend of mine on Facebook or somewhere says, "Oh, I have this wonderful friend you should meet." And I love that. So if you're listening and you have a fabulous friend, or you are the fabulous friend, get in touch with me, because I love meeting new people doing this kind of work and having them on the show. So thank you for being here, Michelle. And let me just tell the people a little bit about you, okay? And then we'll get started here. So a little bit about Michelle. She is the founder of Soul Work for Moms. And this is an online resource for moms that are looking to grow personally and spiritually through motherhood, which is exactly what we're doing here. She has been a mother since the age of 17. And so she can relate to any of us who've ever felt like, did we give up our lives when we chose to become a mom? And I know I felt that way at 20 when I had my first, which is still pretty young. Felt like, you're never going to be the same again, and you kind of aren't, right? So she understands, and she has a passion for connecting with women who are struggling in motherhood and helping them connect with themselves and connect with other women. And that's one reason why we're going to be talking about relationships today. She lives in Cincinnati, Ohio with her husband and 3 children during the school year. And in the summers, she gets to go to San Francisco with her family. Sounds pretty great. And right now you can find her on her website at soulworkformoms.com and find out more about her new podcast interview series that she's starting. She's interviewing moms about their struggles and strengths in mothering. And check out all her resources on her website as well. Michelle, let's get started here. So what do you think, first of all, about personal growth in motherhood? What does that mean to you?
So personal growth to me means growing, developing both personally and also spiritually. And I think that that's important to note, because the way that I look at growing is like a ladder, and that you can get so far in your personal development, your interactions with other humans. But that's going to stop if you're not also stair-stepping with that spiritual development. And for motherhood, through my own experience and, of course, what you've been going through, motherhood, like you said, is that fertile ground And we get to become the mama bear that gives us the passion and the drive to not accept status quo, because we see these beings that we are here to take care of and love, and to know that we're not doing our part. Um, to a mom, that it's just unthinkable. We'll do anything we can. And so I think that's why motherhood is just so beautiful in many ways. But for the personal growth piece, it just really gives you that motivation that I think you might not have otherwise.
Okay, you said so many great things right there, just in the opening statement. I got to back up here.
Okay.
So first of all, I love that you talked about personal growth as this ladder of, we're trying to get somewhere and we're trying to kind of take it one step at a time. And I really want to emphasize that, because for all our listeners out there, I think a lot of times we get confused and we start to think we've got to just change all of a sudden, or be
Right.
something, or be like someone, or be a certain way. But, what you're saying is there are these steps and we need to take it slowly. And I especially appreciated your emphasis on spiritual growth and personal growth. One of my favorite definitions of personal growth comes from The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. And he talks about how personal growth is really, it's helping yourself or others develop spiritually. Really, that's what it is. You're developing your highest spiritual potential. So I agree, I'm totally on board with that too. And then I also loved how you said that, that motherhood sort of brings out that mama bear in us, that we don't accept the status quo. Now, tell me a little bit more about that, because you can talk about anything that I'm just emphasizing right now, but I think that that's beautiful too, and very true.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I had my daughter, I got pregnant at the age of 17. And of course, that was shocking, a bit traumatizing. And there really, at that time for me, there wasn't time to stop and pause to think about what was happening. I got into a mode of, I just have to do what I need to do to provide for this young child. And it really wasn't for me until the birth of my second child, 9 years later, when it all hit me. It all hit me that I have so much pain around so many parts of my life, but that if I don't get this together, my children are going to suffer. I was noticing that I was starting to resent my children. I was noticing that my relationship with my husband, although wasn't terrible, it was starting to probably go in a direction I didn't want it to go. And I wanted my children to, we all want our children to grow up with parents that are in a good relationship, but I wanted my children to know that regardless of the outcome of anything, that I did everything I could to work on myself to provide for them. And that's where that mama bear part comes in.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. And that it's so true. That goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about, when you shut down as a mom, it does not just impact you. I remember speaking to a group of women, and most of them were mothers. It was a large group, and I was talking about women's mental health and depression, and someone stood up and kind of asked the question of, well, isn't it okay if I'm depressed because it's only me, right? But I said, no, it's not only you. Especially if you're a mother, it's you affecting your children. And I said, I don't want to put that burden on you, but I need you to know the truth that it does affect our kids when we don't grow ourselves, when we don't overcome our challenges, and when we don't continue to push ourselves, right?
Yes, yes. And if our light inside of us is dying, there's no way to light the light inside of our children. So if you think about us all being candles, how can we extend our flame to our children if our flame is about to go out itself? So they deserve us to be alive with that fire of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love this. Okay. So, and so many moms kind of think that, it doesn't matter if they're unhappy even, maybe you're not even depressed, but you're just, like you say, you're not alive, you're not lit, but
Right.
how much better for them and for us
Our
if we're
children
lit.
feel, they feel whether we are alive in our life, and our children look to us for how to live their lives. And mothering in our culture, there is a subtle message that to be a good mom, you need to be a martyr, you need to get rid of your life, and that you need to do everything for the good of your children. But what's absent from that idea is that for the good of your children is also to live a life for you that lights you up, that makes you feel good. And we're afraid to do that as moms, I think, because we're afraid that we will neglect our children. What happens if we are out there living our life and doing the things, the dreams that we've had? But the question really is, how are you neglecting your children by not living the life that you have dreamed? Of course, there will be people who maybe are checked out and they're not actively engaged with their children. That's a whole different story. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is not putting your dreams on hold and going after those as a model for your children of how to live their life.
Yes. We are the example, and we can light in them their dreams and show them the way by doing that ourselves. You know, my tagline is overcoming, becoming, flourishing. And so, you know, as we're talking about overcoming the hard times, you know, you're also moving it forward to, we also need to become the best that we can be and, you know, develop our self-worth so that we can share that with our children and the rest of our relationships, and also flourish. You know, that's
absolutely
achieving our dreams shows them, hey, look what you can do too. Not just telling them.
That's right.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, and so these are all motivations for everybody listening out there, you know, and I'm sure you can relate, listeners, to what Michelle is saying, that we all have had those times where we feel guilty. We feel like we're taking away from our children if we're not with them all the time or doing everything that they need, or, you know, all of those sorts of things. But one thing I've noticed and I've learned over the years is just what Michelle's saying, that when we don't take care of ourselves first, then we don't have that to give to our children, first of all. But also that truly we're not showing them the example of how to take care of themselves. So if we want our kids to grow up, and think about how you want your child to grow up and be. And you want them to be confident and to fulfill their dreams and to be, you know, a good person and to be kind and to be spiritually evolved and developed and, you know, and all these things. So then why wouldn't we be working on that ourselves, right? So it's really important. This is a really important point that Michelle's gotten into right from the start, which I love. So thank you for that. So let's talk about where relationships fit into all of this. Obviously, as you're talking about being an example to our children, what about other relationships?
So before you become a mother, we have lots of relationships in the world. But I think it starts with the relationship with yourself, and then the relationship that you have with your extended family, and then the relationship that you have with the community. And then what happens once you become a mother is there may also be a relationship with a significant other there, usually, sometimes not. And then there's that new relationship with your children. Each one of those spokes coming off of that center of the relationship that you have with you, what they're doing is they're reflecting back to you where it is that you can grow. So when you're triggered by your children are your teachers in that moment, showing you where you can grow. When your husband or your partner is triggering you, it's not them, although they may have their own things that they need to be working on. They're triggering in you and showing you where you can grow. And so suddenly, as a mother, you have not only the relationship with the community and maybe your parents or your siblings, but you have these really deep, intimate relationships at home that are showing you all the time where you need to grow. And the thing about being the mom is that you are not as easily able to walk away from those relationships. And so they're just constantly saying to you over and over, grow, grow, grow.
Yes. Oh, I love how you're defining this. This is wonderful, because you're so right. That's what I think I'm getting at when I say that, you know, this is our fertile soil to grow in, because you're right. Our children, our relationships with our partner or spouse, with whomever, they push us. They show us, hey, this is what you might need to improve on, or this is what you can do a little better. And one thing that I was thinking is a story from a few years back when I was trying to meditate. I wanted to be calmer. And so I was in my room trying to practice meditation, and I'm a total overthinker. So I was trying to just stop my brain and kind of like watch my thoughts and all this. And you know, my kids were outside. My kids were all young, and my door was locked, and I could hear them picking the lock. And I was just getting so frustrated. I was like, just ignore. And then finally they come in and they're like, Mom. And I'm like, can't you see I'm trying to be spiritual? Get out of here. You know, it's like, okay, here I am trying to be spiritual, quote unquote. But what I learned was that like you say, those relationships, we're not going to leave our kids, you know, as moms as invested as we are and our listeners are, but they point out what we need to do. And it's hard. It's so hard, but it's like, you know, I realize that in the relationship as a mother with the people around you, with your children, that's where the growth really happens. Like you're saying, it's not that I need to go and be spiritual and then go back to my family. It's really that they're going to show me all those opportunities where I can develop that part of myself, that calmness in the middle of the storm, let's say, in the relationship, right?
They are the ones that they are your trainers. They're like Rocky going up into the mountains to train at high altitude. They are the ones that are doing the high altitude training, because if you can get that connection and that growth and that sense of being with all of that happening around you, then in the absence of that, I mean, you're gold. You are like gold medal. You've done the training in the hard parts.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I also want to back up and acknowledge that little metaphor you used of us being the center with the spokes coming out. I really love that. I've never heard it put that way, but it makes so much sense, because I think for our listeners, it can show everybody listening out there that we really do need to be strong at the center. You know, if those spokes are coming off of us, then it's kind of like what I thought when you were saying that is, well, yeah, like people say, that's true, that you can't really love somebody else until you love yourself. You know, it really is that same principle kind of shown in that metaphor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it all has to do with the relationship with yourself and the relationship with other people, connection with yourself, connection with other people, constantly back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wonderful. So we have our personal growth that we can do personally. Obviously, it kind of starts with us. And then it can but must also develop in these relationships in our lives. And like you said, I love how you kind of, you know, expanded it out. We have ourselves, we have our close family, our children, our spouse or partner, we have our, you know, maybe extended family and friends, and the community. And on all those levels, we can choose to grow, right?
Absolutely.
So let's kind of talk about that. Let's talk first about personal growth, like personally for us, and maybe some ideas that you have that have helped you to choose to grow as a mom, as a woman, as a person.
Yes. So I have three areas that I always suggest starting with. And the first one, and all three areas have to do with connecting with yourself and then connecting with others. The first area is to speak your truth. Speak your truth to yourself and speak your truth to others. And whether that truth is I'm struggling, whether that truth is I have dreams that aren't being fulfilled right now, whether that truth is, hey, life is really great. You know, how often are we afraid to speak that truth to our friends? They start talking about how hard their life is, and then we start talking about how hard our life is when maybe we were feeling really good about life that day, right?
So true.
I think the first step is that we have to speak our truth. And that's the connection with ourselves. Now, we also have to hear the truths of others. We have to hear the journeys that other women are taking, women, mothers specifically, so that we can hear that we're not alone, and also so that we can gain another perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first step is speaking and hearing the truth.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. So I really appreciate how you broke that up into two parts, because you're right. I think so many of us, we have so many misconceptions, especially as women and as mothers, about what other people are doing, what they're like, how they can do things better, and it just diminishes us, right? It kind of we let ourselves diminish our light, as you were saying earlier, you know, because of that. So I'm a big proponent of let your voice be heard, speak up, tell us. That's why I love you sharing your story or me sharing my story. It just shows people you're not alone. You're not the only one that messes up or has a mistake or, had to get through a hard time or whatever. We're all in this together. And so, yes, so everybody out there, listen to this. Let your voice be heard. Share your stories with each other. Support one another and listen to one another. Listen to one another and then let your own voice be heard, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And then the second thing that I suggest is to find the hurt inside of you and to ask it what it needs. There's an inner intelligence inside of us. We're constantly looking out for other people to tell us what to do. And I think that that's okay. That's part of it. But we have to listen to what our innate intelligence is telling us that we need. So that's the connection with yourself. Find the hurt and ask what it needs. Then from there, again, it's all connection with self, connection with others. So then for connection with others, you take that and you find your teachers. The teachers may be a book. The teachers may be an online community. The teachers may be professional help that you're seeking, but we have to have that connection. And you'll know when you ask the hurt, you'll know, is this an area that I just need some quiet reflection on? Or is this an area that the wounds are really deep and I maybe need to go and find a therapist, find a psychologist, find someone to help me see what's going on? So find the hurt, ask what it needs, connect, and find your teachers.
Oh, wonderful. So this is a hard one for a lot of people, right? But one thing I appreciated about what you said was you didn't say ask yourself what you need. Find the hurt. First find the hurt, then ask it what it needs, then go find the help. And I think a lot of us want to skip that first part of finding the hurt to ask it what it needs versus just thinking in our head, well, I need this. Well, if I just do this, then I'll be fine, instead of going deep and going, oh no, there is a wound here that needs to be healed in some way.
That's why we can't ask ourselves. We have to ask the hurt, because when we ask ourselves, we will either deny that it's there. We will feel shame that it's there. You can't ask yourself. You have to go straight to the source and ask the hurt. Yeah,
I love that. Beautiful. Okay, and number 3.
Number 3 is sacred time. So sacred time alone, connection with self. That may be prayer. That may be meditation. That may be setting intention to sit down and read a book for yourself. It may be, if you're able to, eventually you won't always have little kids if you have them right now. Eventually it could be taking a week away, and that can be really overwhelming to some people. It may not even be possible for you right now, but where are you right now? What sacred time can you take to yourself? Yes. And then the sacred time with others is whatever that means to you. For some people, it's church. For some people, it may be a women's circle. It may be the retreat, going with other women, connecting. It may be, I used to go on knitting retreats. That was my sacred connection with other women. It filled me. So sacred time with yourself, sacred time with others.
Oh, wonderful. I hope everybody out there is listening to this, because we always have to give permission here for a little self-care. We talk about it pretty much every show. And it's funny because just this week, somebody posted in our Facebook group and said, have you actually done a whole show on self-care? Because you talk about it a lot, but I don't think you've done a whole show on it. So we're going to be doing that very soon, just on self-care. But we talk about it every week because it's so important. And I am a huge proponent of alone time and solitude. And one thing I write about in my book, This Is How We Grow, is that there is a difference between solitude and isolation. And one thing that you're talking about, I love how you keep on bringing it from yourself and others, because it has to be that and instead of that or, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of times as moms, we think, well, we don't have time for both. So it's either me or my friendships or my, these other connections. But you're saying and that's really important. But solitude is, to me, time alone with a purpose. You're saying, I need to retreat and recharge and whatever it may be, rest, recover, have fun, whatever you need to do. And I'm going to come back even better and stronger than I was before. That's, to me, solitude. And then isolation is sort of like, I'm pushing people away. I'm isolating myself from other people, and it doesn't have the same kind of intent. It's more like hiding versus retreating and recovering and recouping and refreshing. And so we need to be careful not to isolate, especially in our times of need, when I know that's where a lot of us tend to isolate, when we most need somebody else. But that's why I appreciate you saying, you know, we need that solitude, but also that time with that spiritual connection with other people too. And to me, that also, you know, I think another way of looking at that is who feeds your soul, you know, and are you spending your time with people that sort of drain you, or people that give to you and you give to them, and it's sort of this mutually beneficial experience, like you said, like at church or a retreat or something like that, where you're actually it goes both ways, right?
Yeah, and I think that it has to, that's why I add the modifier sacred.
Yeah.
And otherwise you have to be careful that you're not distracting yourself. Mm-hmm. That you can take 5 minutes by yourself in the middle of the day to sit with yourself, take some deep breaths, maybe read a page out of a favorite book, or you can take 5 minutes and jump on Facebook and scroll through. You know, time on Facebook could be sacred if you're doing it with intention to go to a group that you're in, connect with some women, read something. But I think you have to distinguish between distraction and finding sacred time to fill yourself up, because it's really easy to say, I'm going to go take some time to myself, and I'm going to go to the ice cream store, and I'm going to eat this huge ice cream sundae. You can do that in a way that is filling you, right? You can enjoy that in a way that is sacred, or you can do it in a way that is the opposite, where it's actually taking away energy from you.
Such an important point. And again, I hope everybody's listening to that, because we are in such a distractible world. It's so easy to get distracted, as we know. And I'm so glad you mentioned Facebook and, you know, just the online distractions, which we've all fallen prey to. If you're online at all, you know how it is. You can sit down and an hour just is gone before you know it. And you really
Pinterest,
didn't do anything.
hello.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So we do have to be careful and purposeful. I think that goes along with that sacred, is you're having that purposeful solitude that's, you know, sacred in whatever way, you know. So I'm actually, as I told you, Michelle, I'm here at my mother-in-law's house in California by myself for a week, just exactly what you said, because I needed a break. And I've been saying for literally a couple of months to my husband, I need a vacation. I need a vacation. And finally, we made it work to where I could get away. Now, everybody listening, I have 6 kids. Yes, the oldest is away at college, but the other 5 are at home, and they have very busy lives. It's a very busy schedule. But, and luckily I have a house that I can stay in for free, so that definitely helps. But if you can make it work, getting away is so healing and rejuvenating when you do it right.
And that was you speaking your truth, to say, even have the courage to say to your husband, I need time away.
Yeah, that's right. Because a lot of times we feel guilty saying that. Like, I'm not a good mom if I need to leave sometimes.
Yeah.
But
and there can be fear in that, and what we are afraid that the other person will think about us, or that they say, you know, no, you can't do that. And it may trigger some fear in them. It may trigger in them, why am I not saying what I need? So it can be a tricky dance to speak your truth and also honor what that may bring up for other people.
Oh, wonderful. Very true. Very true. So speak your truth, everybody. If you need a break, just say, I need a break, and then make it happen. And let me just give you a little piece of advice. I have to say, as a mom, pretty much you're going to have to make it happen versus it just happening, right?
Yes. Like many other things, I'm afraid.
That's right. You have to fight for the good stuff, right? And it's okay. There's a quote from Judith Orloff from her book, Emotional Freedom, and she talks about how stress comes after you, but you have to go after peace. You know, and it seems counterintuitive. You feel like the peace should just come when I feel at peace, you know, then everything is good. It's not like that. You have to work for peace. Like you're saying, we have to have that sacred time with other people, with ourselves. You know, for me, it's exercise in the morning and scripture study and prayer and meditation and quiet, you know, a little bit of quiet and thinking and journaling and all of these things. And for everybody, that's going to be different, but we have to go after it. And it is much easier to just let ourselves sleep in, be distracted, do whatever our kids need, whatever it may be. But that's not necessarily the same as what you're talking about here.
No, I mean, you know, the easy thing to do in life is to go through the drive-through and to get fast food for dinner. But you know how that's going to make it that you know how that will make you feel. And so we have to be intentional and not just take the easy way out. Now, there's not anything wrong with also saying, you know what, I just can't tonight. And we are going to Chick-fil-A or wherever that is.
That's right.
It's not to make you feel bad when you do that, but it's to say, let's not let life live us. Let's be intentional to live life.
Yes. Love that. Live life intentionally, everybody. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about growth in the relationship with our significant other, which is a huge topic. We've done a couple shows on our relationships and how to strengthen marriage and how to overcome some of the challenges that come. So definitely go check out some of those shows, especially my favorite episode that I did with my husband for our 20th anniversary on how to strengthen marriage by overcoming conflict. So go check that out. But Michelle, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on how we can choose to grow in our relationships with our significant others, because let's face it, that's going to be one of the biggest places where we're going to have challenges, right?
Yes.
It's normal.
So the person that I often go to for relationship advice, her name is Christina Hibbert, and she was the one that first told me to show me that relationship with your significant other only happens when you are being truthful with what's going on for you and they're being truthful with what's going on for them. That is when a lot of times the fights happen. That's when we get scared. We're afraid of either being left. We can, so many fears can come up in that. But what I feel is important to remember is that the true relationship happens when you come together in those hard times to grow together. You each are growing individually, and that's how you grow together. But on that surface, especially like in the new years of a relationship when everything's great and you guys never fight and that feels so good, that's something totally different. That isn't, the relationship honestly hasn't even started yet. The relationship is when the hard parts happen and then you are each growing individually and then you're coming together and growing together.
I love how that's put. And I appreciate what you said about, that our relationships really start when the things get hard.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll help everybody listening to know that if you're going through a hard time right now in your life personally or in your marriage or your partnership, that's normal, that's not only okay, it can be really good. It can make your relationship better than it was, better than you thought it could be. And those, I'm completely agree. I think back to my own marriage, and like I said, we've been married 20 years, and the hardest times in our marriage have been my favorite to think of, because especially when we've been going through like when my sister died and all that happened, it was us together. We had to make it work. We had to be the parents. We had to step up and support one another. And it was hard. And we did fight and get mad at each other and felt like the other person doesn't understand what I need or whatever. But when you're willing to stick with it and make it work, both partners, that's so important. Both partners are willing to be honest.
Yes.
Open in the relationship and work at it. You can make it just so great. You come out so much stronger on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. The hardest thing I think when you're fighting is that you think that things are going downhill, when really, if you're being brave enough to work through those, you're actually pushing through, growing through, like you like to say, into a new possibility that you didn't even know was there before. So the possibility for even closer connection is there. And when you do that a few times, then you can start to approach those difficult, arguments, fights, conversations with an excitement of, oh, okay, good. We have the opportunity to get closer and not come at them from a place of fear.
And this is reminding me of something you said earlier that I wanted to emphasize, this point of looking at our perspective, our perspective on the situation, because earlier when you were talking about that our children especially give us those opportunities to see where we need to grow. And that's sort of, the impetus for our personal growth. And in the same way, our relationship troubles can be seen as opportunities, but it's all about how we look at it. So, like you say, if you feel like you're stressed about your kids, bringing out the worst in you, quote unquote, or if you feel like your husband brings out the worst in you, or you can't, get along or whatever, maybe a change in perspective is exactly where we need to begin to see that, these can be opportunities if we just tweak that little change in how we see it.
Yeah, and those significant others, I mean, they are recreating things from your past, the wounds that you have from the past that need to be healed. And that's why it hurts, because it's just, it's just picking at that wound that healed or hasn't healed and needs to be opened up to heal properly.
Yeah, wonderful advice. Okay, and it's not easy, so we all know that, but this is wonderful advice if we just look at it as an opportunity to grow together. Like you said, individually and together. I always say in relationships, it's like there's three people. There's you and the other person, and the relationship is sort of the third entity. I mean, in my book too, like God is part of it. But, really your relationship has to be a focus as well as each person's needs individually, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So right now I want to take a few minutes to do my Dr. Christie's Simple Solutions segment. And this is the time which I love when I get to share with you the products, the programs, the ideas that I think can help you as moms make your lives simpler, richer, and more meaningful. And today, as we've been talking about our relationships, especially our relationships with our children, I want to share with you a fabulous website and some apps that can help you as a mother to develop that relationship with your children and to teach them. And that is Edoki Academy. And I have with me Valerie Tews from Edoki Academy. Valerie, welcome to Motherhood.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you calling in here from London. And I have to say, I just recently became familiar with your apps, and they are fabulous. I've already downloaded a few for my daughters, especially the studio that makes little, what do you call it, that makes the little movies? What's it called? Easy
Animated
Studio.
Film?
Yeah, Easy Studio stop motion. There's Easy Music. There's Zen Studio. Like you said, there's mathematics apps. So tell us kind of basically what these apps do for children.
So we catalog our apps into 4 different categories. We have language apps, we have math apps, we have creativity apps like the ones that you mentioned, Easy Studio or Zen Studio, and we have discovery apps, and some of these apps are very well known, like Busy Shapes or Crazy Gears. And the principle behind all these apps is, first of all, we want children to enjoy learning, and we think it's very important today. And we also try to make it as adaptive as possible, because having worked in classrooms ourselves, we saw how each child learns at a different rhythm. And so, some people, most of the time people will say, well, my daughter's 3, what should she be doing? And the real answer is, it doesn't really matter what age she is. And if you start from what really interests them, they'll go into anything, basically. But you always have to identify the one thing that will get them to concentrate.
All right, so tell us a little bit about Edoki Academy.
Yeah. So Edoki Academy was created 6 years ago when the iPad was first released by Apple. 2 friends of mine and myself got together, and we saw how our children, the 3 of us have 10 children altogether, how they were so attracted to all these new devices with iPhones and iPads and everything. And we wanted to find a solution for these children to use these devices in an, quote, intelligent way, unquote. And so being Montessori teachers ourselves and having spent a lot of time in the classroom with children and having children of our own, we decided to set up, the first name of the company was Les Trois Ailes, because the 3 of us lived in Paris at the time, and we released our first app in August 2010, which was called Numberland, and it's still doing really well on the App Store, by the way.
Wonderful.
Very recently, our company, so it was 3 female co-founders, merged with a competitor called 7 Academy, And so our new name is Idoki Academy, and now we have a catalog of 20 apps available on the App Store and Google Play Store. And we have offices in Paris, London, Montreal, and Hong Kong.
Wow, amazing. And
yeah,
I have to
and there's
say,
there's only 15 of us, so some of these offices are one-people shops, but still.
Still, it's an international brand, right?
Exactly.
Right. So how can our listeners find your apps?
The best place would be to start on our website, which is www.idokiacademy.com. But also, if you type Idoki Academy in the App Store, you should be able to find our selection. And I have to say that Apple has made our life easier in the past year and a half because we can offer bundles to parents, and I think those are great deals. We recently repackaged all our bundles, and basically you get at least 30% off the cumulative price if you were to buy all the apps separately.
Oh, wow.
So we've created like a reading and writing bundle and a primary bundle and a early learning bundle so that apps are gathered together to suit parents' needs.
That's wonderful. So it's Idoki Academy. That's EDOKI Academy.com. And also, like Valerie said, you can look them up on iTunes at the App Store, and also you also have some on Google as well, right?
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And right now, Valerie is offering a special gift. The first 10 people who email her at support@edoki academy.com will win a free download of one of their apps, so you can try it out for free at home. So again, the first 10 people to email her at support@edokiacademy.com will win that free download. And the rest of you, well, I hope you'll still check out Idoki and some of their downloads for your kids. And thank you so much for telling us about Idoki Academy, Valerie. And I hope all you listeners out there will go right now and check it out and find the apps that are perfect for your child to help them learn and grow, as we are trying to do here on Motherhood ourselves.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Have
so
a great
much.
day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so now we'll get back to our discussion about growing through motherhood through our relationships with Michelle Duncan Wilson as we talk about our relationships with our children. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about then our personal growth in our relationships with our children, because we touched on that, but that's huge as moms. Obviously, that's a main focus of what we're all about.
Yeah, so I see the biggest opportunity in the relationship with your children is to learn how to love unconditionally. And our children will show us, just like every other relationship, lots of areas that we have to grow. But I find that most often what women are getting triggered by is that their children are being different than what they had expected. Mm-hmm. And whether it's physical needs that they hadn't anticipated, whether it's that your child doesn't do well in school and you just assumed that they would do well in school, or even when you get into some of the tougher years and maybe you're dealing with drug abuse. I mean, all of these really hard, really intense topics. I'm not taking any of those lightly, but the opportunity is, how can I learn to love my children without any condition and to be there with who they are? Because I think that for our children, we are willing to love them and without condition in a way that we aren't willing to do with anyone else. Mm-hmm. You know, when you see someone that's on the street and you think, man, that person's going through a lot of stuff. Oh, well, that's fine. That's just who they are. But then the second that it's your child and they're going through stuff, there's the fear, which there's the mama bear fear, but then there's also the fear of, what does that mean about me? Will people judge me? Yes. Will people think that I did something wrong in my parenting? And so then you disconnect from your child in that moment, and you want your child to be someone that they're not, so that you don't have to feel bad.
Yes, this is so true. And I hope everybody's listening to this, because we've all been there. We've all had those moments, whether it's just your kids throwing a tantrum in the store and you're thinking they shouldn't act this way, or, on the flip side, like you say, getting into some major hard stuff when they're older, or even just the whole letting them go, as they go away to college or to work or wherever they're going. It's so hard. And to not take personally everything that they do, because they are they are a separate person. See, that's how we feel though, right? Like they're sort of a separate person.
Yeah. And I think there's a fear that we have that if we let our children be who they are, that we are not doing our job as parents.
Yes.
And it is a really difficult dance to know where you need to step in and be the mother who can show them and help them and guide them. I tell my 16-year-old, I said, I'm pulling up the bumpers, like when you're bowling, right? And you go with the little kids and you pull the bumpers up so that they don't go in the gutter. I just say, all right, you got really close to getting in the gutter, so we're going to pull up the bumpers for a little bit. But I think that we have to release some of that fear to let our children be on their path too. And, I can share that one of my children is, it has a really hard time in school. It doesn't come naturally. Grades can be difficult for this child. And that wasn't the case for me. School was really easy for me. And it's hard for me to know how to best help that child. And the fear in me says, oh, well, I'm just going to show you how to get good grades. We'll do tutors. I'm going to help you with your homework. We're going to do, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But at some point, I also need to accept the fact that this child has a hard time learning. I can be there to support them, but I also need to be there and just let that child be on their path. I'm trying not to use specifics. I don't want to, call out my child in front of everyone, but, let that person be who they are and accept them and say, it's okay if school is hard for you or whatever that thing may be for your child. It's okay. I see you. I see that, and you are loved. And this is not a reflection of who you are as a person.
And it's not a reflection of who you are as a mother.
Not at all.
So important, right?
Yeah.
That's how we all feel, though. One of the best things I ever heard was somebody said, the fruit of motherhood isn't how your children turn out. The fruit of motherhood is how we turn out. Really, motherhood is here, like we're talking about, to grow us into something better. And it's all about how we change and grow. It's not about how they turn out. And another friend of mine who has many children, she had two daughters, and one was sort of going down the perfect path like everybody would want their kids to, and the other one was sort of not. And she said, I don't take credit for the one on the perfect path any more than I take credit for the mistakes that the other one's making. It's just not about us.
No. And, it really just comes down to fear and wanting our kids to do, there's fear of, will we be judged? But there's also the fear of, I just want my kids to live a happy life. I want my kids to be prepared for the world. All of that these are good things. But we have to also recognize that our children have their own path, and our children are capable of learning the things that they need to learn in life as well. My child that struggles in school is on that path that they're just going to have to learn how, there's so many opportunities for growth there. Who am I? What is my identity as a person? Is it whether or not I get good grades, or is it who I am and how I interact with other people? And that's not for me to choose for that child. Right. That child came with all of those things already in the package.
And when we step in too much, we prevent those opportunities for their growth.
That is exactly right.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that. I keep thinking we need to really, I know that most of us probably in some ways think of ourselves this way, but we really need to focus on the fact that as mothers, we really are teachers, and just like a teacher, think of your teacher at school. They can be wonderful and sort of lead the horse to the water, but the children have to decide to drink, right? I mean, we cannot force that. And we can teach them. We're trying to, teach them. Somebody once said that parenting is teaching your children what you think is good. in the world, you know, like really that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to show them, here's what I've learned is good for life and for people. And, you know, this is the good stuff that I've found. And then you hope that they like it too, or that they find their own good stuff. But sometimes they don't find their own good stuff. And sometimes they find some really bad stuff. But, you know, all we can do is teach them and love them.
Yes. And I think that we start to change the world that we live in when we can let our children be who they are unapologetically to other people. So when I don't try to hide, I'm using my child's grades on this example, but it can be applied to anything. But when I don't hide from my friends that my child struggles in school, then suddenly they don't feel the burden of trying to hide as well. Yeah. You know, I don't have to say, when they say, oh, how's so-and-so doing in school? I don't have to say, oh, everything's great. I can say, there's some real struggle there. Yeah. And that's okay. And I don't have to be ashamed of that. And you don't have to be ashamed of that if that happens for your children.
Right. You can be real about it so they can be real about it.
Speak your truth.
That's right. Speak your truth. Speak your truth. I love that. And, you know, I do want to emphasize again that point about fear. So, because I'm so with you, I think every time, I know personally, every time I've had trouble with my children and their choices, I can immediately go inside when I take the time and notice, oh, I'm afraid of X, Y, or Z. And one thing that I've learned that has helped me is to be able to stop and to, first of all, identify the fear and to feel it, to not push it away, but to actually feel it. Like, this is what it feels like in my body, and I don't like it, but this is it. And when you feel it, it kind of loosens up, and then it opens the space up for the love. Then you kind of can focus on replace the fear with the love. What would you suggest for others to help them overcome some of these fears?
You have to be willing to feel the fear, like you said, and that's exactly right. You have to feel it so that it can move through you. Mm-hmm. It's when we push the fear down because we don't want to feel it. We have heard that, you know, how do you push your feelings down? Is it eating? Is it checking out? You have to feel it and then let it go. Yeah. There are lots of resources for that. And I would suggest just looking up ways to feel your feelings, the 5 feelings that you have. But it really does start with being willing to feel it, being willing to vocalize it, and then letting it go so that it doesn't recycle over and over and over. Because when you have a feeling that you're unwilling to feel and it recycles over and over again, then it becomes a mood. Mm-hmm. And that mood can then become a state that you're in for weeks, months, years. But it really starts with, like you had said, oh, I'm feeling fear here. Wow. Where did that fear come from? What am I afraid that's going to happen? And then we can teach our children to do that too. I have a son who is afraid to go to school, and every day he's throwing a fit because he doesn't want to go to school. And what helps him the most is when I tell him, just like that movie that came out, that Inside Out movie about the feelings. I love it. It's so good. It just shows it's great. And we talk about that a lot, and we need to talk to ourselves the same way. Mm-hmm. Thank the fear for showing up. It's just trying to help you, to tell you that something's going on here. Mm-hmm. And then, like that hurt, like we talked about earlier, it's trying to speak to you. What's going on? Something needs to be healed.
Yes. And I appreciate how you kind of animate those. And that's exactly what I was thinking of when you were talking about like asking the hurt and talking to the fear. Because I was thinking of Inside Out and kind of giving it a personality. It's the very first method of therapy I learned in graduate school was narrative therapy. And that's what it's all about. It's about, you know, kind of giving those parts of those feelings in you that you feel are part of you that they're really not, giving it sort of a personality or persona, or talking to it or interviewing it, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that woman that I spoke of earlier, Christine Pelmis, she often tells me, find that girl who's feeling afraid and set her to the side. Mm-hmm. And then so that you can continue with what you need to do. And let's acknowledge her, but let's also not become her or let her be living life through us. Let's acknowledge her, set her to the side, and then continue with what it is that you need to do.
Love that. Love that. And just for you listeners, for your benefit, Michelle was saying, you know, you can go online and find some tools. I have a video on how to feel powerful emotions. So my 3-minute therapy on YouTube, if you just go look that up, or if you go to my website and type in FEEL capitals you'll find my article with the video attached so that you can have a little more guidance on that. So in our last minutes here, let's just touch briefly on, I know we could talk a whole other hour on our other relationships, our friendships in the community, and how we can, maybe a couple of ideas on how we can choose to grow in those relationships as well.
Yeah, those relationships are really important. And as mothers, they are often the relationships that we put on the back burner. Back there with the relationship with ourselves, it's also on the back burner. But the relationships with others, now I include in that your job if you're working, okay, because there are lots of relationships that happen within that. But I think that whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a working mom or somewhere in between, there's a part of you inside of you that really wants to contribute outside of your home, right? And we're all different. We're all in different areas of that, and especially depending on where you are with your children and their ages. But honoring and acknowledging that you have a contribution to make outside of your family, I think is really important. And so I think that you can grow in how you interact with others by recognizing that you have a place, wisdom to give out into the world. And also and again, when we were talking about gaining perspective, those relationships out in the world, they help you to gain perspective, whether it's seeing things in a different way, opening up new ideas that you had never even thought of. But those relationships are key for our own personal growth as well.
Yeah. Yes. And I was thinking they open us up to new possibilities. And I was just thinking maybe one thing that we could emphasize is the importance of, I was thinking how a lot of times I do admire other people. I admire how they do, how they parent or how they are as a mom or how they are as a person. And to me, that's different from feeling bad about myself because they're good at that.
Yeah.
To be able to look at other people as models of, you know what, they're really good at that and I'm good at this and I can help them with this and they can help me with that. And we do grow so much through our relationships with others.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do on the podcast when I interview moms. We do have, I talk to expert guests, but also just to have that interaction with other women. So, that blogger that you look to who always looks like she's got it all together, she does have wisdom to share with us, but she also has pain too. And I think that we can take from both. We can take from her wisdom and we can also hear the pain and know that we're never going to hit a point in life. I hate to burst the bubble, but we are never going to hit a point in life when there is no longer pain. But I do believe from the bottom of my heart that we can reach a point where that pain doesn't cause the suffering. And it's through that relationship with others that I think that we can really accelerate getting to that point.
Oh, and that's a beautiful way for us to kind of wrap up is everybody's going to have your pain. We all are. And that's how we kind of started the show is think about those hard times, right? But it doesn't have to evolve into suffering. If we choose, that's what we're talking about. If we're choosing to grow through it, it really doesn't have to evolve into suffering. It can actually make us better, make our relationships stronger.
The pain is here for us. It really is.
For us. It's our teacher.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, Michelle, it's been such a pleasure having you here on the show. You have so much wonderful wisdom. I definitely have to have you back. And I want to encourage everybody out there to go and visit Michelle's website at soulworkformoms.com and also to check out her interview series because it sounds fabulous. And getting to hear, I was thinking you have a perfect voice for this too. You're very calming and have a lot to share. So I look forward to listening to your series as well and hope everybody will go check it out.
Oh, thanks, Christy. It was such an honor. And I love what you're doing for mothers. We really need people like you who are being brave enough to share their journeys. And it contributes to the healing of all of us. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. The feeling is mutual. And again, I want to thank Michelle for being here. And I want to thank each of you listeners for tuning in each week here on Motherhood Radio. I hope you will visit my website at drchristinahibbert.com for all kinds of resources on how we can continue to grow in our relationships and personally. And also check out my brand new book, 8 Keys to Mental Health Through Exercise, which has a whole chapter devoted to exercise as a family. It's a surefire way to improve your family relationships for sure. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.